Well, let's go ahead. Let's get right into it. The 2021 All-Texas College team. Look, let's start with this, okay?
Yeah.
Putting this together was pretty difficult.
Yeah, we'll get to one position in particular later.
Yes. I think that there were a number of returners, obviously just because of the 6-year transfer rule and all that sort of stuff too. But also, I think that at the same time, we had a lot of turnover at the top, right? We had a lot of turnover with some of the bigger teams, with some of the more established names. I've kind of described this as a new era in a lot of ways because you do lose Sam Ellinger, you lose Shane Buechele, you lose Kellen Mond, you lose Charlie Brewer. That's kind of a generation of quarterbacks.
Right. I think, and particularly with this state, you know, we're more or less defined by the quarterback position, right? For better or worse. That's not to say that we don't produce great receivers, offensive linemen, secondary, things like that. But quarterbacks defined eras to a certain extent, especially in Texas. And when you more or less wipe the slate clean, like it's not completely clean, right? We have some names that we're going to mention. We have returners coming back that have experience, but yeah, you're kind of losing the names, right? The big name recognition guys. And so when we were coming up with this list, you know, it was a lot. We realized we're like, it's going to be a different year, huh? Like it's going to be a really, really different year and different names coming up.
Yeah, no question about it. Well, let's get started. We're starting off at this state's signature position. That is the punter position. So let's go ahead and get started. On the first team, we've got Austin McNamara, the punter from Texas Tech. Fantastic punter, has been tremendous since his freshman year. Coming in very close behind at second team, Lucas Dean, the punter from UTSA.
Yeah. Last year, let's just, I want to compare last year to this year. This year wasn't very hard.
No.
Last year, we were like, who's really going on? Like, because we had a man for first team last year.
Yep.
And then second team, we were like,
Yeah.
And so this year, it was not hard at all.
No.
Austin McNamara and Lucas Dean were the two best punters in the state last year.
Yeah. I think that one thing that's been funny is that, especially ever since Michael Dixon has come through, right? Like, I think that this state has changed.
Yeah.
You mentioned we have Braden Mann, who won was the finals for the Ray guy. Did he win it? I don't remember. I'm so sorry.
And fans, we apologize.
But yeah, you mentioned Austin McNamara has been a guy who's come through, who's been tremendous the past couple of years. Jordy Sandy over at TCU had a great year. Ryan Buchevsky, Chris Nagar, by the way, over at SMU last year, both as a kicker and a punter. Tremendous stuff. We don't need to talk this much about punters, but we are big fans. I am a punter stan, just for the record. Let's move over to kicker. So, at first team at kicker, we've got Seth Small over from Texas A&M. The first Aggie on the list will not be the last. Second team, we had Cameron Dicker. This is kind of funny. These guys have been up there among the best kickers in the state for a while, and they're finally seniors.
Yeah, it feels like Cameron Dicker's been there forever.
Forever.
Like that kick against OU feels like 10 years ago. Kyler Murray's already gone and almost won an MVP, it seems like. But no, I think this was another easy one. I think that when you look at, again, I don't want to spend too much time on kickers and punters, but I think this is another position that has been elevated by, you know, since the Justin Tucker, I guess you should say, that kind of era.
Yeah.
Randy Bullock was on that, was around the same time as him too. So you kind of take that, and it's been a pretty good season, for a pretty good era for special teams kickers and punters. So
yeah, I'm sorry to my Baylor people that are watching. This is actually Danny Sepulveda season, but anyway, let's move on.
That's a good point. Yeah. Fine.
Moving on to defensive line. So, I will mention actually real quick on specialists. We do pick a best specialist in the magazine. Our best specialist is Austin McNamara. Moving on to the defensive line. On the first team, we've got DeMarvin Leal from Texas A&M, who we named the best defensive lineman in the state. O'Shawn Mathis from TCU, Praise Amawule from UTEP. On the second team, we've got Jaden Peavy from Texas A&M, Dion Noville from North Texas, and Alfred Collins from the University of Texas.
Yeah. If you have a problem with any of these names, I don't know what to tell you. I was looking up DeMarvin Leal. I think if you're a fan of PFF, if you're a fan of their rating systems, I believe he had a grade above 80 in like every single game, more or less. He had a phenomenal season. He's going to be a first-round draft pick if his projection still goes where we expect it to go, and he's going to be that kind of the next in line of those A&M pass rushers, right? Those kind of elite guys that we project to be going to the next level.
I mean, we put him on the cover of the dang magazine. What more do you want us to say about DeMarvin Leal?
That should speak for itself.
Yeah,
exactly.
And O'Shawn Mathis, the guy who really broke out this year. I think it's tough with TCU because Kyrie Coleman also a tremendous defensive end. We went with Mathis, we just felt his production was a little bit better. Praise Amawule, I think one of the most underrated defensive linemen in the state of Texas from the UTEP Miners. And on the second team, I mean, Mallory, I think that you can tell us, how big is it to have Dion Noville back?
I like it.
Yeah. And then obviously a projection pick in Alfred Collins. We saw what he could do to end the year. I think some people might have been like, oh, he should be high. We're waiting to see, but I think that we still very much think that he's going to be a big-time player for them. So moving on to the linebacker position, we have first team, Terrell Bernard from Baylor, Trevor Harmonson from UTSA, DeMarvion Overshone from Texas, Colin Schooler from Texas Tech, and we named Terrell Bernard our best overall linebacker. And on the second team, we got Aaron Hansford from Texas A&M, Delana Robinson from SMU, D. Winters from TCU, and Trayshawn Chamberlain from Rice.
Yeah, and we should also hint that Terrell Bernard is also listed as our best linebacker, correct?
Yes, that's what I meant.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you mentioned that
Yes,
or not.
I did.
So yes, I mean, DeMarvion Overshone, I think we saw what he could do last year. We saw a lot of glimpses. I don't want to say he was overshone by Joseph Osai at times, but definitely Joseph Osai was the main guy, and as far as that defense was concerned. Now it's time to step into that new era. We have him with Overshone. We have Coburn on the defensive line. It's going to be a new names for Texas, but names that you've been kind of waiting for their moment, waiting for them to step into the limelight, and it's going to be them. Yeah, I'm excited to see Overshone for sure this year.
Yeah, no question. And Colin Schooler was a guy in the second half of last year that I think really stepped up his game in a big way. People might remember last year his hit on Charlie Brewer at the goal line against Baylor, where he just erased him from existence. And so, but outside of that, he was a really solid player. I actually think that Texas Tech's linebacking core is one of the best, I think. Maybe one of the most underrated, I think, in the state of Texas. And on the second team, Delana Robinson been a mainstay at SMU, had a great case for first team. D. Winters is a guy that, like you talked to Gary Patterson, he thinks he was just as good last year as Garrett Wallow. He'll have a chance to prove it this year.
Did he come in as a defensive back?
I believe so. That's typical. That's typical of TCU.
And that's typical. I think that's typical of like the modern game too, where it's like you can find these guys who can move really well. They're obviously recruited to be maybe a safety or a corner or something, but they're probably more physical enough to where they don't get bullied by, they don't get bullied in the run game. They don't get bullied by tight ends, and you can just move them up a little bit, and now you have a great coverage linebacker. Yeah,
and I will answer Andrew Christensen in the comments real quick, who decided to run a 3-4.
I was going to point that out.
So here's the thing, right? We get to decide this every single year, and it does change, I think, depending somewhat on the talent that you have, on the names that you want to get on the list. To me, I think that linebacker is a deeper position right now than defensive line in the state of Texas, just in terms of returners and all that sort of stuff. And so for me, there were more names that I think we felt like deserved to be honored at linebacker than there were at defensive line. Some places cheat and do 4-4s, to try to get more guys on the list. Yeah. But for us, it's a decision that we have to talk about, it's a decision that we think through, and we decided to go with a 3-4 for those purposes.
There you go.
Moving on to defensive backs. Best overall defensive back, we've got Marcus Jones from the University of Houston, one of the most underrated. Again, I feel like I say this with every single guy on this list, but very underrated player, both as a defensive back and as a punt returner, may I add. Marcus Jones, Raleigh Tejada from Baylor, Travis Hodges-Tomlinson from TCU, and Jalen Petrie from Baylor on that first team. On the second team, we got Texas State's Jaron Morris, Miles Jones from Texas A&M, Damani Richardson from Texas A&M, and Rashad Wisdom from UTSA.
Yeah. So I think Travis Hodges-Tomlinson, I want to say, according to PFF, is their top returning corner in the nation.
Yes.
So high praise.
Yes.
Like, obviously right there. I'm going to brag about my dude, Jaron Morris.
Go for it.
Jay. So obviously, I watched a lot of Texas State. I used to be a beat writer. Went to school there. You don't need to hear spiel again. I think I've seen Jaron Morris more than any other defensive player probably in this all-Texas team. Texas State's defense has hinged so much on the fact that they don't have to worry about whoever he's covering.
Yeah.
And last year they had to move him around so much. He played nickel, he played safety, he moved to both corners. There were so many injuries, and he was the one staple that they were just like, we need to put him anywhere and everywhere. And he was good. And the fact that they can do that in this era of, big wide receiver, the new trend is big corners to match up with big wide receivers. The fact that they can throw a 5'8", 5'9" Jaron Morris out there, and he's okay. Like, it shows enough. Obviously, this state is just deep with great corners, so that's why he's second team. but that's not a knock to his ability because to be beat out by guys like Marcus Jones, Raleigh Tejada, Travius Hodges-Tomlinson, and Jalen Petrie. Like, that's not a knock on him. Those are great corners ahead of him.
I think that this might have actually been the hardest position on the list.
Sure.
Quarterback.
Rashad Wisdom's on second. Wisdom is the heart and soul of that UTSA defense.
Right.
And he has to be on second team because there's so many good defenders.
I would almost, and I mean, we put Miles Jones and Devontae Richardson on the cover of the magazine. That's how high we are on them, right? And so I think that just says how deep this position is. And I mean, look, I think that the other thing to mention is that, hey, who said that we're going to run a 3-4? I mean, listen, if we kind of wanted to match it up a little bit more, we could run a base dime defense.
I was about to say, there's no
list.
College in here that's running with like just 4 defensive backs. Everybody's throwing out 5.
Right. So, maybe next year we'll cheat a little bit more, but not right now. All right. We're going to take a break real quick, and we're going to say we are Tex Football Today. We are here every weekday at noon talking football in the Lone Star State. We hope you will become a Dave Campbell's Tex Football subscriber at texfootball.com. By the way, big news. So we have been saying all week, Wednesday is the last day to subscribe and guarantee that you
hit
get
that home pretty hard yesterday.
Yes,
actually.
yes.
Wednesday, but
Wednesday. Well, you might wonder why Greg Tepper's not here. It's because he's on vacation. But what I'm going to say that it is he went and marched down to the publisher and said, the people need more. The people need more time.
That's where he is, actually.
Yes. Thank you so much to Greg Tepper for your sacrifice during this trying week.
Sacrifice. Oh, he's just done. He died in the battle.
Sorry, I'm the new host now. Get over it. But we are extended to Friday. If you subscribe by Friday at textfootball.com/subscribe, we can guarantee you that you are going to get the magazine before it hits bookshelves. We usually say that it's going to be about like late June. For if you're a subscriber, you get it mailed directly to your house. It's way easier. You get it way earlier than everybody else. You can brag to your friends. We usually say like into July is usually when we're going to have the magazine on bookshelf. So the easiest way to get it. And also, I will mention too, if you like us, if you like our show, if you like what we do here, it also helps support us a whole lot if you do subscribe. So, Ish.
Yeah.
Let's continue. We're going to move on to the offensive line. The best offensive lineman, easiest decision of my life, Kenyon Green from Texas A&M University. Jalen Thomas from SMU, Dawson Deaton from Texas Tech, Spencer Burford from UTSA, and Jacob Brammer from North Texas makes up the first team. On the second team, we've got Connor Galvin from Baylor, Junior Engelau from Texas, Diva Villa from TCU, Hayden Howerton from SMU, and TJ Stormont from Texas Tech.
I think this is the year we're finally going to see the Kenyon Green hype like fully flourish.
Well, he's moving to tackle.
Exactly. That's what I was about to mention.
Yeah.
He's been a guard because he was good enough. He was basically good enough to where Jimbo Fisher said, we have to start this guy.
We have to play him.
Somehow.
Right.
And so he basically came in as a freshman, guard, immediately starting. Left tackle leaves. Okay, now he was recruited to be a tackle. Now he's going to transition. And there's going to be a reason. You're going to see why he was always hyped up to be the best tackle in his recruiting class, why he was immediately – they had to play him immediately. He's gonna be an incredible talent. You're not gonna really see much change as far as the pass protection goes because of how good he is. Despite him, despite a senior leaving, he's gonna step in. He's gonna be perfectly fine. He's so versatile. He's so athletic. I mean, Kenyon Green. We're gonna be talking about him so much by the end of this year. Being like, hey, did you realize that Kenyon Green gave up it's gonna be one of those numbers where it's like PFF's gonna tweet out a Kenyon Green stat and it's like, oh yeah, he got beat like twice all year or something like that.
Yeah, I will say, so last year I served on the Football Writers Association of America All-America Committee, right? And the FWA named him a first-team All-American, fully deservedly.
Right.
But you should have heard some of the people in there talking about him, especially some of the more offensive line experts.
Yeah.
We had, Barrett Jones from Alabama.
Yeah,
we had him.
yeah.
He was on the
Nice.
call. He was basically like, I just want to help out, especially with offensive line. He's like, I've watched this kid. This kid is the real deal. And this is a kid who was playing left guard last year. Now you kick him out to tackle. I think that none of us are concerned about how well he's going to be able to move. Like you mentioned, they just wanted to get him on the field, and the guys that they had last year at tackle, obviously playing in the NFL right now, right? Mm-hmm. And so this is going to be his moment to shine. I do want to touch on some of the other guys, of course. Sure. I think that Jalen Thomas at SMU has become really underrated. I think that actually that SMU offensive line in general, I think that people don't understand how good it's been the past couple of years in protecting Shane Buechele, in paving the way for those running games with Xavier Jones and with Ulysses Bentley.
Sure.
And I think that they're going to be just as good this year. I think that they're going to continue to develop, getting Hayden Howerton back for his 5th year of eligibility.
Right.
I don't remember if it's his 5th or 6th year. Another guy, TJ Stormont, on the second team, transferred from TCU to Texas Tech. I think they really hope that he can lock down that left tackle position, make things a little bit more stable for them, and because that was a real issue for them. And Spencer Burford, a guy who's been on this team for years now at this point, really the anchor of that UTSA offensive line. But that UTSA offensive line, I think they had 3 guys that I really did consider for this team.
Yeah.
Burford ends up being the guy who makes it, but I think that it's a really strong group this year.
Yeah, you want to one guy I want to mention, kind of holding his unit together by the string, is Jacob Brammer.
Yeah.
Because North Texas's offensive line.
Can I get a go,
Mallory,
Green?
you wanna chime in on
Not
North
gonna
Texas's
show.
offensive
We
line?
had a whole segment the other day about it, and I think we've moved past it and we've accepted it. So
Listen,
But
we've
dude's
all grown
big.
together
Dude's
as
really
people.
big though.
No, he's
Jacob-
great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I will say
he's
too.
definitely
I will
an
say
anchor
too.
to that offensive line.
That's-
Sure, I can agree with that.
That offensive line coach, Mike Blesh, he is a very good coach. You saw it start to come together last year, even when the pieces were struggling a little bit. And I think that with another year of development in this system, I think Jacob Brammer is going to be awesome. But we're going to move on to tight end. Tight end, first team, total no-brainer. Jalen Weidermeyer over at Texas A&M. And on the second team, we've got Christian Trahan from Houston.
There was one player in the country last year who picked the worst season to have a breakout year, and it was Jalen Weidermeyer because he played in the same conference as Kyle Pitts. And Kyle Pitts basically revolutionized the tight end position at Florida, was nominated for the Bolitnikoff as a tight end.
Right.
And then you realize, oh, right, Jalen Weidermeyer also had like this incredible season as this breakout tight end, and nobody across the nation really noticed except for us, because obviously we pay attention to A&M. But of course, Kyle Pitts becomes like the most hyped tight end in his generation.
Yeah, well, I will say too, just to go back a little bit. Remember that recruiting class that Jalen Weidermeyer came in from Dickinson? He was like the backup option.
Sure, yeah, no, 100%.
Baylor Cupp was that
from
guy.
Brock, yeah.
And Baylor Cupp, we still are very high on him. He's been injured, but Jalen Weidermeyer played as a true freshman and was required basically to play at a high level. And right away, he's been really good. And last year, you mentioned, we saw it all come together. I think that he could have a chance to be one of the best tight ends in the country this year, potentially win the John Mackey Award.
Especially with A&M working in a new quarterback, right? He's going to be that
huge
safety blanket. Jimbo Fisher loves those type of options, those check down options, and he's big enough to be a number one option in a route concept. But to have him underneath, just in case things break down, boom, there's your outlet. He's going to catch it. He's going to be a red zone threat. I mean, and then Baylor Cupp's your backup. Like, that's the fact that Baylor Cupp, who was supposed to be the number one guy, is now your backup option. Cool. That gives him room to come into play. So, like, I don't know. They're going to complement each other. That's going to be a fun unit to watch for you.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned bringing in a new quarterback, likely Haynes King, potentially Zach Calzada. I think having that safety blanket, I think that's been a real issue for Texas A&M the past couple of years, just not having that go-to receiver. But Weidermeyer's really been that piece, and potentially he can allow those guys to grow around him then. Right. Moving on to that position, 2 wide receiver. First team, we've got Reggie Robertson from SMU, Marcel Barbie from Texas State, and Eric Ezukanma from Texas Tech, with Reggie Robertson being labeled our best wide receiver in the state. Second team, we've got Jacob Cowing from UTEP, Rasheed Rice from SMU, and Bradley Rosner coming back from his year of opting out at Rice.
Reggie Robertson almost had 500 yards in 4 games.
Oh, my gosh. He is not fair.
He averaged over 20 yards a catch. It was awesome. Like, he was fantastic last year. Like, I'm so glad he's coming back. Hopefully he's healthy. Like, he
had a knee injury, didn't he?
Yeah.
I think it was the game against Memphis.
Yes, it was.
It was.
Yeah.
Because he ended that game with over 240 yards, wasn't it?
Right.
Like that?
Yeah.
And then he came
Yeah.
out. Oh.
And in the first half, by the way.
Yeah, first half.
First half. I was at that game. Oh,
Jeez.
gosh, that really sucked when he went out. But I will mention, too, a note. SMU is undefeated. They're 12-0 in the past 2 years when Reggie Robertson plays.
Man.
And I asked Garrett Riley, the offensive coordinator at SMU, like, why is he just so critical? Why does the game change so much when he's in? He's like, man, I don't know, but he better stay healthy this year. He better play 12 this year. And so
100%.
Yeah, and to touch on some of the other guys, this is another group. I mean, receivers always just the hardest group, just because there's so many good players in the state of Texas. Jacob Cowing was a guy that we very much considered for first team, but we ended up going with Barbie. His touchdown numbers were insane.
He was basically the automatic guy for Texas State last year. Like
Right.
he came out of nowhere. Really, he was a JUCO guy, and it was like, who's this kind of? He had his big catches in the red zone. He was just that target where. And I asked Brady McBride about this. He was like, "What's it like having Marcel Barbie in the red zone?" He's like, "Oh, that's the biggest relief ever. Like if things break down, just throw it to Marcel. Like
Right.
there are so few receivers in today's game where I'm okay with throwing a fade to, and you could throw a fade to Marcel Barbie and he'll get it. It's fine. Like he's a great catch. But yeah, that knocked Jacob Cowing down,
Right.
who is just a game breaker for UTEP. Whenever they get him the ball, it's a big play. And that gives them him. They have Hankins and they have Hardison who can get him the ball. They have 3 guys on that offense that can really change a game if they're clicking.
Yeah, no question about it. And Rasheed Rice, I think if Reggie Robertson's not back, he's probably a first-team guy, right? And Eric Ezekama, I mean, he's the other first-team guy that I will mention. He's dealing with a
I was about to
broken
say
arm
he's out
right now.
indefinitely, right?
They think he will likely be back for the first game. That's sort of the word right now.
Okay.
But he is. If he's healthy, it's not a contest, right? He's a clear first-team guy.
Sure.
So on to running backs.
Ooh, this
This
is
is a fun.
fun.
So here's what I'll say. There are 3. No, there are 4. There are 4 amazing running backs in the state of Texas.
Yeah.
And I had to put 2 on the second team, and that sucked.
Yeah.
That felt real bad. But Sincere McCormick from UTSA, our Texas College Player of the Year last year.
He's a
No-brainer.
First team.
Second in the nation in rushing yards last year. He's our top running back.
Already as a sophomore, UTSA's most highest career rusher.
Yep, all-time leading rusher. And then Isaiah Spiller from Texas A&M being the other guy on the list at first team. Again, no-brainer. Second team, potentially the guy some people who think can win the Heisman, Bijan Robinson from Texas. And then Ulysses Bentley, the 4th, a very underrated running back from SMU.
Yeah. I think that with Bijan Robinson, I think the biggest thing against him was that Tom Herman didn't realize he was their best running back until like November. and so finally towards the end of the season it was like, oh, we should have been giving this guy the ball the whole time instead of whoever they were trying to give the ball to. But yeah, no, it just shows that, his numbers could have been even more insane if they would have realized, early on. I'm not saying starting from day one, but maybe September he kind of know that what you got in the backfield. But we saw what he could do, and it's just like, you know what? If it wasn't for these other guys putting up, Sincere McCormick was going on there regardless, and because A&M's offense, Spiller kind of took that to a new level.
Yes.
And so you really couldn't. To me, those guys were first team. Like even if Bijan maybe started from day one and put up better numbers, I think the contribution of those other 2 were just too big to leave off first.
I've actually got a piece from last year on TexasFootball.com where I kind of wrote about the impact of just giving Isaiah Spiller the ball. Right. I mean, their offense just changes dramatically. And some of it is, and I mentioned this in the piece, some of it is obviously, yes, if you are running the ball a lot, it means you're usually up, you're not down. But at the same time, he is critical to keeping that offense moving. I mean, I don't want to go as far as saying that Texas A&M is a ball-controlled team, but they lean that way.
They're a tempo control.
They're a tempo.
They want to play their tempo.
Right. Yeah. And Isaiah Spiller is one of the biggest reasons that they're able to do that. And so, again, Bijan, by the end of the year, very well could be the first-team running back. Or Ulysses Bentley could be.
Yeah, I was about to say, I do want to hit on Ulysses Bentley because I think you mentioned it. A guy who was kind of forced into a role that he really wasn't suited for. He's not that every down back that should be getting, every single carry. But of course, when TJ McDaniel went down, he was forced to be that. He was a little bit, I don't say undersized, but he's undersized for that type of role in particular. And he still played really, really well. He's a receiving threat. He's going to have help this year with
TJ McDaniel and Trey Siggers.
Trey Siggers, yes. They have backfield depth. And so he's not going to be asked to be the guy that carries every single ball.
Right.
So
no,
I'm excited for him this year too.
This is going to be a breakout year for him, I think. Yeah. And so now we'll close it out with the most difficult position.
Oh,
wait, no, we do. We have utility.
Okay,
we have utility. We got one more before that.
So hold off on quarterbacks after we get to this. So
we got a typo on the first on Anaya Smith's name. So first team Anaya Smith from Texas A&M. Second team Tresson Ebner from Baylor. Again, no brainers. Tresson Ebner really emerged as a receiving threat last year and as a return threat last year. But Anaya Smith kind of seen as that Swiss Army knife in a lot of ways.
Line him up anywhere. Can play, X can play out wide, can play in the backfield. I mean, come on now. There's nothing that he can't do, it seems, for A&M.
Yes, no question about it. They played him a lot at running back last year. The word is now he's listed as a receiver.
Interesting, okay.
I think that a big part of that is that they have running back depth with Devon Achane. and they don't have that so much at receiver, unfortunately. Sure. And so I think that he has the potential coming into this slot to potentially have a really big year. I will also mention one other guy in this sort of similar sort of vein that just missed the cut was DeAndre Torrey from North Texas. Mm-hmm. They're going to use him a whole lot more as a receiver, not just as a running back. I think that's going to be a great role for him. But these two guys, just total no-brainers for me.
Same. No, I mean, Anaya Smith is going to be – there's going to be some third-down packages where he'll probably be in the backfield as a receiving threat to kind of throw a little different looks at him. But, let's move on to the most interesting one.
Yes. Yes. Let's wait for a second to put up the graphic.
Oh.
All right. Let's go for it.
Let's go for it. Here
I
it
was
is.
already ahead of you. I'm sorry.
You're all good. You're all good. Let's go. So, first team, a guy who did not play college football in the state of Texas last year, Tyler Shuck. Mm-hmm. This was tough. Yeah, this was really, really tough. We threw around, I would say, literally every name. Literally every name. Mm-hmm. We obviously discussed Max Duggan from TCU. Mm-hmm. We discussed one of the guys who could win the quarterback battle at Texas or at Texas A&M, mm-hmm. Haynes King, Zach Calzada, Casey Thompson, Hudson Card, but you can't name somebody to the first or second team who hasn't won their starting job.
Sure. We thought about Brady McBride.
We thought about Brady McBride. We thought about Clayton Tune. We thought about Gavin Hardison. We thought about putting the second team quarterback Eric Schmidt, on the first team. Mm-hmm. But you have a guy in Tyler Shuck who has played college football at a high level.
Yes.
He did lead Oregon to a Pac-12 championship. So he has that experience. He's also coming into a situation at Texas Tech where, yes, there's going to be some projection, but he's coming into a situation with an air raid offense with a lot of really good receivers, including Eric Azukama, with a great running back in Jeyarajah Thompson, with a pretty experienced offensive line as well. We feel like he has the pieces in place to potentially be the best quarterback in the state of Texas. Yeah. And on the second team, look, it's been since 2017 since we put an FCS player on in the All-Texas College team.
Yeah.
Look, I think that we can be – like, it's tough, right?
Yeah.
Weighing whether to kind of push somebody over the edge, that's tough. I mean, the last guy who did it was Jeremiah Briscoe, a 2-time winner of the Walter Payton Award. That's what it takes.
Right.
Eric Schmidt has been that kind of player.
Yeah.
At Sam Houston.
I think that it wasn't especially after they won the national title, but even in the midst of their playoff run, we're like, we could do that, right? Like we could just say like, no, he is the second best quarterback. We're projecting him to be, this on the second team. And like, I remember you came to me, you were like, I'm thinking about putting Schmidt on the All Texas team, and I was like, I don't see an argument against it. Like,
right.
That was the thing. One more thing on Shuck, because I think for us, the reason why we can project him so well, I think it's the Justin Herbert effect, because you saw what Justin Herbert was at Oregon. It's not what he's doing right now in the NFL. Mm-hmm. Right. He's throwing the ball all over the place in the NFL. I think what Tyler Shuck did last year, he threw 1,500 yards, 13 touchdowns, 6 picks, 63% completion. Those are pretty conservative numbers, but Justin Herbert also put up conservative numbers. I think that's a product of what Oregon wanted to do.
Right.
Tyler Shuck is still projected to be a first, second round draft pick because I think of what they know he could do and what he wasn't asked to do at Oregon and what he can show off at Tech. Now, getting back to so that was that to me, that I think that was what pushed us to first team.
Right.
Tyler Shuck.
Right.
With Eric Schmidt, I mean, come on, the guy leads Sam Houston to a national title. Is sure you can say, oh, he has weapons and blah blah blah. Sam Houston's always had weapons, but they haven't had a quarterback who's been able to effectively get them the ball. Before Eric Schmidt, the past 2 years, since Jeremiah Briscoe, like it's been that long since they've had a quarterback who can, and guess what happens when they do? They win a national title. Like, and right. you mentioned the defense obviously played a huge part, but the way he pilots that offense is so methodical, and he's a dual threat. You can't just focus on his passing because he can run the ball. I don't see how there was a definitive argument for somebody other than Eric Schmidt to be on this list.
No question. Well, let's pull up the first team again. The full first team: Tyler Shuck at quarterback, Sincere McCormick at UTSA, and Isaiah Spiller at Texas A&M at running back. Reggie Robertson, Marcel Barbie, Eric Azukama at receiver, Jalen Weidermeyer at tight end, Jalen Thomas, Kenyon Green, Dawson Deaton, Spencer Burford, and Jacob Brammer at offensive line. Anaya Smith at utility, DeMarvin Leal, O'Shawn Mathis, Praise Amawule at defensive line, Terrell Bernard, Trevor Harmonson, DeMarvion Overshone, Colin Schooler at linebacker, Marcus Jones, Raleigh Tejada, Travis Hodges-Tomlinson, Jalen Petrie at defensive back, Austin McNamara at punter, Seth Small at kicker. And then the second team, Eric Schmidt, quarterback from Sam Houston, Bijan Robinson, Ulysses Bentley at running back, Jacob Cowing, Rasheed Rice, Bradley Rosner at wide receiver, Christian Trahan at tight end, Connor Galvin, Junior Angelau, Steve Avila, Hayden Howerton, TJ Stormont on the offensive line, Treston Ebner at utility and defensively, Jaden Peavy, Dion Noville, Alfred Collins on the defensive line, Aaron Hansford, Delana Robinson, D. Winters, Trayshawn Chamberlain at linebacker, Jaron Morse, Miles Jones, Damani Richardson, Rashad Wisdom at defensive back, Lucas Dean at punter, and Cameron Dicker at kicker. Dicker the kicker.
Yeah, I was waiting for that one. Y'all weren't going to say it, I was going to say it.
Woo, man.
What a list.
Yeah.
But well-deserved.
Yes, very well-deserved. And the crazy thing about this, right, you list off so many names. There's so many players that we couldn't even mention. So many
absolutely.
great players.
Yeah, like I don't know, man. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be a fun season because, again, we're seeing – and I think if you pay attention to college football in this state and even high school football and you're waiting to see some of these names emerge, you know, this is going to be the year to do that, right? This is going to be the year to see the Haynes King pop out at A&M potentially. This is going to be the name to see the Baylor Cup. I mentioned 2 A&M players, I know, but still, you get what I'm saying. All over the state, you're going to see a lot of these guys come out. Hudson Card at Texas, potentially, if he beats out Casey Thompson. It's a turning over the page, and it's been a while where we've had 1 year where so many teams kind of transition like that, right? And I really can't pinpoint when the last time that happened where it was like so many teams replacing quarterbacks, head coaches, and coordinators, and receivers. And it's just like, okay, almost wiping the slate, not clean, but, you know, a little bit, the slate's half clean now. So it's like, who are these new breakout names that are going to kind of emerge?
No question about it. I think that there is a new era emerging in college football this upcoming year. I think that it is one of the reasons that we have a team like Texas A&M poised to take a step. A team like Texas emerging in a new era, TCU potentially having a big year, SMU continuing to grow.
Especially in the quarterback position, too, in Texas. I mean, there's so many questions in that quarterback position. It's just a toss-up, really. I mean, you just have no idea. So it'll be interesting to see next year.
Yeah, I think that by the time that we put out the postseason All-Texas College team, could be totally different names, especially
half
at the
these names might not be on there.
Right.
It'd be fun to compare them, too. You know,
Yeah, and we definitely will do that when that time comes around. And so I think it's going to be a really fun year. Right?
I'm excited.
I think that this is going to be as fun a year as we've had in a little while in college football. I don't think it's going to be too chalky.
Yeah, I don't, because nationwide, like it's been like, you know, Alabama's reloading, whatever that means for them. You know, Clemson's turning
reloading.
Right, exactly. It's like
they're gonna be just as good as they've been.
They got to bring in the other 5-star. Yeah,
the other 5-star to back up the other 5-star.
Yeah.
It's just
Clemson's turning a new leaf. You know, all these players are, all these programs that we're used to seeing the same names every year. It's like, oh, they're turning. I don't know. You know, Alabama was supposed to be turning a leaf last year, and Mac Jones goes.
Oh no, their 5-star's only 19. Oh no. Oh heavens. Oh goodness. Well, this has been great. As I mentioned, we do this every week. Republican Football. Subscribe on any of your local podcast vendors. We have a lot of fun doing this. If you enjoyed our content, if you want to see this in the magazine, go to texfootball.com/subscribe.